It's time for the Rose Chat Podcast, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the world's most beloved flower, the rose. Join award-winning gardeners Chris Van Cleef and Teresa Byington as they chat with rose lovers and experts from around the globe. With each episode, you'll gain valuable knowledge and insights to achieve the rose garden you've always dreamed of. Listen now as we explore the world of roses.
Try Haven brand soil conditioners, providing generations of gardeners with a truly all-natural alternative to chemical fertilizers with their line of composted manure and alfalfa teas. Easy to brew and use on all indoor and outdoor plants. Find them online at manuretea.com.
Hey friends, today I'm chatting with one of the busiest, most helpful, and most successful rose growers around, my good friend, Ron Daniels. We're going to get some tips from Ron, of course, but there's something different I want to talk about with him too. I've been wondering why PBS sent photographers to his recent open garden. Hey Ron, welcome back to Rose Chat.
Oh, glad to be back with you again, Teresa. Down here in dry, hot Tennessee. I mean, we hadn't had any rain here at my house in about 6.5 weeks. And so it's been, I'm on survival mode with my roses, just keeping them alive.
Oh, yeah. We'll probably talk about that at some point in our chat today, just what people should do during a drought. But few people in the rose world have helped more people grow roses than you. And I'm just wondering, are you back to speaking to garden clubs and master gardeners again? You know, we took a break there with COVID.
I am. Actually, yesterday I spoke to a group up in north of me here in Clarksville, Tennessee. It was a combination of a couple garden clubs, and they were, one of them was over 50 years old. And a pretty neat group of people. They're kind of like master gardeners, but they're not. They do small projects and promote gardening. So I had a good time with them yesterday. And I've spoken that was my 16th time this year. And kind of slows down a little bit in the summertime when it gets hot. But this spring I was real busy. And it's good to get back out there and get around gardeners because, during the virus, you can do a few Zooms and go to meetings and stuff like that, but it's not like being around gardeners, and most all of them are great cooks, which I enjoy because they all bring snacks and stuff. So, but they were real. I've been kind of using this year to recruit for the Nashville Rose Society, and we've had some good success already 6 months in with the society, which I think we may talk a little bit about, but I just feed off them. I learn when I go out and do these presentations, I learn just about as much as they do because, you think you've heard every question, but not really, because there's people come up with things you never thought about. But,
absolutely. That is so true. And I've done a little bit of speaking, not nearly as much as you this year, but what I have seen is an energy about it that I didn't see before. People are really excited. They're really wanting to do more in their gardens. So it's just a real exciting time around here. Absolutely.
And you're right. We had that 2 years where we're just kind of surviving in the gardening world. But, and of course, being where I am here north of Nashville and with this area growing, it amazes me, the people that's moving into our area and going to our website. And I always remember what Chris told us years ago about how important, boy, was he right too, to have a good website for people to find you. And you're always saying that too. They got to be able to find you.
Absolutely.
And it is actually working here. And I think we've had 25 to 30 new members in the last 6 months.
Oh my goodness, that's fabulous.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And that we can't believe how many people are moving here from California. And they all they all grew roses out in California, and they, of course, here in Zone 7, it's a little bit different. It is in Southern California, as you well know. So, but it's fun to teach them how we do it here. And,
my goodness, they're going to have questions. You can plant a broom handle in California and it'll grow a rose. Those of us in Zone 7 and up here where I am in 5B, it's a little bit different.
Definitely. So that's been fun. And, when you get around people that grow roses in other parts of the country, it's always interesting to me because they just all have different ways of getting to that rose. And so I told them, and I did a workshop for them a couple of months ago, and I told them, I said, I'm going to learn a lot from you guys too. I said, and some of them have been growing roses 20 and 30 years. Yeah. So it's pretty cool, and it adds a lot to your society when you bring in people that's got experience and, that are more than novice. And,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm still excited about it. Me and John Winter, my co-president, we are scheduled to concession out of the Rose Society. We're going to still be involved, but we've been co-presidents or vice presidents for 5 years, which is very unusual for the National Rose Society because we usually serve just 2 years. Mm-hmm. But it's been fun, but it's going to be hard. We had a meeting yesterday about it's going to be hard to find some more leaders, So, but we're going to be there. We're going to be there supporting them and whatever we need to do. But, you need to change every now and then, just like me and John took over 5 years ago, and we've done a lot of things, and we've grown, and we grew during the virus, and we'll continue to grow, and it's fun.
It sure is. We had our first public event. As you know, I'm on the board of the Indianapolis Rose Society, and we had our first public event, which we call Rose Fest. We've not had it since COVID, and those years kind of mount up. And so we had it. It was our most successful ever. I think we had over 150 people come, and we had an ARS Rose Show, which had been 5 years, and we had somewhere around 10 people to join our society. So those kind of public events, plus there was just a lot of energy in the room and a lot of excitement. And we had roses to give away thanks to proven winners. And it was just a really fun day. We promised them a day of roses, and boy, did we deliver. It was a good day. But it was just, we're charged up by their enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we're back at Cheekwood now, Botanical Gardens. And we've been there back and forth from there to Belmont, but we're back there permanently now. And so we're having our first rose show in late September at Cheekwood in 5 years. Mm-hmm. So we're excited about that. And they've remodeled Buchanan Hall there. I think you and Chris have been in that building before.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you wouldn't know it now because they've remodeled it. And it's going to set up great we're having our district. And also we'll have, the ARS president is coming to speak to us in late September at this rose show.
Oh, that's fabulous. It's so exciting.
I have not met her yet. I've talked to her on the phone and through emails, but I have not met her. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I've been telling my members, I said, how many times can you come to a rose show and meet the president of ARS?
That's right.
Really promoting her.
It'll be a good time. Good time. Now, let's talk a little bit about your garden. Just for our listeners who are not familiar with your garden, describe your garden.
Well, I have a lot of master gardener friends and, of course, rose friends. And I had this lady, and she's actually a landscape designer. I didn't realize she did much of this, but she's actually a master gardener. And I met her some years ago, and she visited my garden this past spring. And she sent me this email. And she described my garden that I've never even thought about. People, when you work in a garden, you really don't think about how it looks to everybody else. And she told me, she said, I'm going to tell you what you've done. And I said, what's that? She said, you made a country estate out of a suburban garden. And I never thought about it that way. And my garden is very accessible to walk through. I have, every variety of types of rose, every type of rose in the garden. And but she said that the way I laid it out and the way I built it, and I had this garden out here in my mind for years and years at this point in time in my life when I got to the age I am now where, make it easier to work in.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
But I thought that was pretty good description of what it is. And she's a very intelligent person and very into gardening and into design, and she said, yeah, you made a country estate out of a suburban garden.
I love that. And I love that you have something for everyone. As far you have visitors to your garden and you've got all the different kinds of roses. And I love that you've made it accessible, not only to work in, but also for people to come and learn from.
Absolutely. And this is my third garden in my lifetime, my third rose garden. This year I've been growing roses 30 years. But this has been the most social. I'm on a corner. And it just, you can't drive by out here without seeing it. And so I've had people pull in here with people I don't even know, pull in the driveway, say, can we walk through your garden? And they'll have people that maybe are terminally ill and have maybe 2 weeks to live. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this didn't happen in my other two gardens. Oh. And then you just cannot believe I had an open garden in May. The 21st and 22nd of May. And I had people that drive by here that never had stopped, and they did. I put signs out in the yard and everything. Aww. And they came in, and she said, I've been driving by here for 3 years, and I've been wanting to come in this garden. So I met a lot of people. I had over 300 people that weekend.
Oh, my goodness.
270 something on Saturday, which was a very hot day. Sunday, it cooled off, and it had about 70 to 80 people. Oh, but there was a lot of people that never had been here. And that was pretty cool to have to meet people. And then when I go out and speak, what I'll do, I'll get the president's email address of the clubs or societies or whatever. And what I'll do when I have one of these open gardens, I just send them an email invitation and they'll come. So I had people come all the way from Mayfield, Kentucky, all the way from Owensboro, Kentucky. I had people coming from 80, 90, 100 miles away where I've been speaking over the last several years. And so that kind of builds it up as far as people coming. Then I always have my rose friends that come by. And we had a lot of our new members that we had joined in the last 2 or 3 years that come to my garden that never been here. And I think it's very important for a new member to see roses growing, and see a variety of ones where they can say, oh, I'd like to grow that rose. Oh, yes. I like that rose. Tell me about that rose. So my daughter, Caitlin, does not allow me to go in the garden when I have open garden because she said I get in there and start telling all these backstories about the roses and I miss people. So I stand at the gate. I have one entrance and stand right there. So, but it's real. It was a lot of fun. And I have an open garden. I'll have another one late September, early October. But I have 2 a year, and it's always good because I get to see people that we have the same thing in common, and they bring people with them.
Yep.
Their relatives and kids and stuff. So it's pretty fun.
For the work we put in our garden, those moments when we get to see other people enjoying it, it's just so special.
Yeah, you just had one, didn't you?
I did, and it was so special. And I had people that surprised me that came from groups that I had spoken to this past year. And I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, one is a group that they wanted me to come and speak about roses, but they weren't particular gardeners or anything. Right. But they garden a little maybe, but so I said, well, if I have an open garden, I'll invite you. And I did, but never expected them to come. It's just very special when they do, and you get to see your garden through their eyes, or you see them take something away that they want to add to their own garden.
And the biggest compliment, after you do a presentation, then when they come to your garden, the biggest compliment you can get, they'll email you or call you or text you with pictures, say, I'm growing 2 roses now, yes. 2 rose bushes, something I may have recommended, and that, to me, that's how we all got started.
Yep.
we all get 2 or 3 and get started. Next thing you know, we got more, and we have gardens like you have and I have, but that's the part of kind of the reward part of doing this hobby is to see people get turned on to it. Mm-hmm. Never would try to grow. I've had people come up to me and she said, I never would grow a rose if you didn't make it sound so easy to do. I said, well,
and you helped them.
I try to be truthful with you. There is some work involved in it. And, but the reward is big. And, but, I feel like this, people can grow roses at all different kinds of levels. They don't have to just grow 150 like I do or like you do. I mean, mm-hmm. they can grow them they can grow 3 or 4. and they don't have the room, they can grow them in containers. So I think you can enjoy roses at all different levels. And I try to, my garden out here, everything's labeled, everything's got the ARS rating on them. And if you want a backstory, I've got some backstories. As my son said, it's useless information, but people love to hear about Peggy Martin.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And then when we did the PBS show, we kind of capitalized on that. We went to certain, if you ever been involved in a filming of anything, it's not like you think it is. They just don't take the camera and go through the garden with you and you talking. They do it in segments, and then they edit it, and then you think, you may film an hour and 10 minutes, and they only show 10 or 15 minutes.
So to tell us about that experience, I saw the pictures and there were photographers in your garden.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That looked pretty cool. Tell us about it.
Well, when I was at the Lawn and Garden Show in Nashville, Tennessee, back in March, for 2 years, they didn't do a lot of filming for this show. It's called Volunteer Gardening. It's the number one garden show in the country. It's on PBS. The local PBS station is NPTV, Nashville Public TV. But they have two of the best public shows, broadcasting shows in the country. But Volunteer Gardener's been around, I think, around 30 years. And so I'd done 2 segments in it back in 2010 and 2007. You go on YouTube and find them. And they were going to do it in 2020. They're coming to this garden here. They've never been here. And I know the producer of the show and she called me. So I seen her at the Lawn and Garden Show. She said, I need to come to your garden. When I need to be there? And I said, well, probably the 3rd week in May and right before I have my open garden. So they showed up here. And so she called me right before and said, all my hosts are they're all busy. A lot of the hosts do it part-time. They have other jobs. And but I had this lady that's done 1 or 2 for me last year that I think would be good for you. And I said, what's her name? And she said, April Moore. I said, I know her. She's a master gardener. I mean, it's like in Nashville, in Davidson County. And I said, I know her well. I mean, she grows a little bit of everything. I'm just, she's kind of a person that just, she just don't grow a rose or two. She'll grow roses and vegetables. And she just got to go to her garden and it's just anything you want, blueberries, whatever. And so I said, this is going to be fun because this is a friend of mine. And so she was a little nervous about it. And she called me the night before. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you what the first host told me when I did the first show back in 2007. Her name was Sally Reynolds. And she said, I called her the day before. And I said, Sally, I said, do we need to rehearse? She said, no, honey. Pretend we're dancing and I'm leading. So that kind of relaxed you right there. So I told April that. She said, that is awesome. And I said, we're dancing and you're leading, April. You're the host. And that's just relaxed her. So when she come that day, we was just like 2 friends in the garden. Mm-hmm. And perfect. So producer kind of seen that. She said, after we did a couple of seconds, she said, you guys, it's just like y'all out here gardening. Both of y'all taking care of this garden. I said, well, she knows a lot about it. And so that was fun. That was real fun to me. And it's always more relaxing when you're around somebody that you have something common with, and plus that understands what you do, in gardening and she's been to some of my workshops. And so it was just real easy to do. So they filmed it, and that was on a Friday, the 20th. And it's going to air probably next month. Like everything else out there, they have public broadcasting. They depend on funds, of course, and donations and all that. So they have to wait. I think the 30th, they get a chunk of money, and then they'll edit it and probably show it in July. Mm-hmm. So I'll let you know when it shows and all. But basically, what we concentrated on a few local hybridizers like Robbie Tucker and David Clemens. I've got his roses out here, and of course Peggy Martin, her story. So it's going to kind of be on that line. They just took and filmed roses different, with some stories behind them. So I think it'll be a little different than I've done it before. The ones I've done it before, I did one on types of roses, and then I did one on, just a garden in general. And so, but it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
It reminds me of the experience 3 years ago, right before COVID. Garden Gate magazine just happened to be in Indianapolis. Someone told them about my garden, and very quickly they said, "Can we come by?" So they didn't, promise anything. It was, like I had a couple of days notice. So they didn't say they were doing an article or anything. They just said they were coming by. And so they came by and saw my garden and decided they did want to do an article. And they came back with a photographer the next day.
Unbelievable.
So just having them walk through my garden and ask me questions, and there was no prearranging. So, but that because of COVID and things slowing down and everything, my article was released in January in Garden Gate. And you never know. You said,
is that the one that you told me to go look for, like in Lowe's or?
Yes, the Garden Gate magazine.
I've got that.
And then when I saw the article, and you don't know exactly what it's going to be or what they think, back to what other people see as your garden. And so I think the title, I don't have the magazine in front of me, but I think the title was A Rose Lover's Retreat. Yeah. So, I'm more out in the country, not really out in the country, but it gives that effect kind of in my garden. But anyway, so it's just very special when someone is in your garden and they're looking at it from that standpoint.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Your garden is beautiful. But let's talk about some tips to help all our gardens be more beautiful. So what do you do? Give us a few tips on make sure your garden is successful.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, I've been growing roses I've been here 8 years. This is my third garden. And so one of the things, and I always when other houses I was at, I've kind of inherited someone else's garden kind of and added to it. But this one here, I had a blank canvas.
Wow.
And so Francine, she kind of designed the house inside, and it's a Southern Living's home, so it has a lot of windows. And I said, I want to be able to sit and eat breakfast and see my roses, or sit in the den and see my roses. So we put a lot of windows where the garden is. My house faces west, and then I have then the sun comes up in my gardens on the east, southeast. So
perfect.
I get summer sun, morning sun, and then get sun on most of the garden 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is perfect. Mm-hmm. And so it dries off quick. So that location was very important to me, and that should be important to anybody building the garden, because a lot of people, they'll go, especially new people, they'll go and start growing roses, and they'll walk into a meeting. So I'm not getting any flowers. And they'll show me pictures. And the first question I asked them, I said, what's your sun? How much sun you getting? Well, not a lot. And I said, what side you put in? And they plant their roses on the north side of the house. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very important, the location, because that determines what kind of success you're going to have. And then I spent a lot of time and energy out here before I did my hardscapes about, how I am about soil. So I have all amended soil out here, about 20-something inches, raised beds, and have no native soil here, no Tennessee clay. And so I think that's the secret. A lot of times what people do, they'll go and buy a rose and they'll plant it whatever ground they have. And here in Tennessee, we have a lot of clay, not a lot of good topsoil. And it does good for the first year, but the second year it gets out of that, I always say it gets out of that 3-gallon pot container, in other words, the root balls in there, when they plant them in the ground, it gets into that clay, and then they start not having very good roses. So any new member, I always encourage them to amend their soil or try to plant it, because you're going to spend a lot of time with that rose, and you got to have good soil. So I think that's the second thing that you need to really concentrate and spend your time and energy on. And you can take existing soil and mend it, but it takes a little bit longer. If you start out with good soil, all you got to do is keep it healthy. And then the third thing that I always tell people, the water source, especially right now. I mean, we're going through a drought here every day. I mean, today it's 100 degrees, and then we've had no rain here. And everything. We're in survival mode. I tell the members at the last meeting, I said, we're going to be in survival mode. I said, an email to all of them. I said, listen, you're going to have to water all your containers every day. and you're probably going to have to deep soak your roses if it are in the ground at least every other day. And some of the members are watering their roses every day. And so you know how it is when it's hot. They produce buds fast, they're small, and the flowers are small if they open up. So there's only one good positive thing about this drought. The Japanese beetles cannot get out of the ground. And so we hadn't had too many of them at all. And here we are almost the end of June, and I've seen 2 or 3, and that's been it. So
same thing here. We've not had any rain, and I'm thinking, as much as I want the rain, I don't want the Japanese beetles to emerge.
Even though, but I don't care. And then the next, I have a water system here, a Wi-Fi drip water system, but there's nothing like a good rain.
No.
It's for your garden. I mean, it's just, you can't water as good as a rain. And so here's the biggest problem that most of us here in the Nashville area have had trouble with this year. We ain't had no black spot because it's been too dry. What we've had is mildew problems. We've had mildew problems and spider mites. And that's what everybody's battling right now. Now, you always battle that a little bit, but when you have a dry condition, spider mites love that. And then I had something happen to me right before my filming and before my open garden. It hadn't happened to me in 30 years. I had bought 9 or 10 new rose varieties and planted them, got them from a greenhouse and planted them, and they were infected with downy mildew. Yeah, and downy is a lot worse than powdery mildew, and it's hard to get rid of. So I called one of my buddies who's been growing for years and years, and I told him, I said, I've got this filming, and I've got this, all the other roses were looking good. He said, this is what you do. You get them out of the ground right now.
That's what I did when I had it. I dug those.
He said, you go ahead and prune them up, spray them with, he gave me this Liliette to spray them. And he said, put them in, put them in intensive care.
Yep, that's what I did.
Yeah. And I said, all right, it's good to know these guys that's been there. And he said, go down to this nursery down in Nashville. It's called Bates Nursery, one of my favorite nurseries. He said, they just got some new roses in. You go down there and get some. It's just about ready to bud, that they're getting ready to open up. He said, then go to them places and plant them there, and it'll get you through your open garden and you film it. So that's what I did. So after I got them cured, and now, downy mildew, I mean, it'll spread quick. I mean, like overnight.
A flash. I call it a flash.
Flash is the right word, because what happened, I talked to the boy at the greenhouse, and he felt so bad. And see, what happened, he developed the conditions in the greenhouse before I even got him. So I brought him home. Mm-hmm. So I had to protect the rest of my roses. But anyway, I got through there. There you go. There, I learned how to do something else. But I was in a panic mode, and some of our other members had the same problem with the downy mildew. So that's what the powdery downy mildew and the spider mites is what we've been battling all spring. The thrips haven't been too bad, not like they have in the past, but these dry conditions, nobody has had black spot. Can you believe that?
I have only a little. We've been so humid here, but boy, not to have black spot, that's a bonus.
Well, that's our number one enemy most of the time with roses. But now I'm still doing the preventive spraying, and every 2 weeks, and no matter what's happening. But I remember I met some people years ago that used to grow roses down in southern Texas and Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi, and they don't try, when it gets real hot down there, they don't really try. They keep their roses alive, of course, but they don't worry about getting flower, getting cuttings, because it's just, and then conditions, it's hard to have a nice roses because they just don't produce. I mean, I'll have some roses out here, but I took a bouquet to that a presentation I had yesterday, and the roses, they thought they were wonderful, but I told them, I said, these are half the size they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Then I told them why, and it's logical. I mean, the buds they develop quick and they open quick. They don't have time enough on the plant to get bigger, and then granular fertilizer. I tell all the new members not to use granular fertilizer during heat. And of course, what I've been doing, and I'm starting tomorrow, another regimen of it, is liquid. Mm-hmm. And liquid's best in dry conditions. and the granular's not. Organics is all right, but organics is slow releasing. And so, but anyway, so that's one of the things. And then, the other thing is choose the right roses. I think, a lot of times we plant roses and I move roses around a lot. And sometimes I move it to a place of the garden they do better because of just the location and all. And then, of course, I'm 6'3", so I like raised beds because they're easier to work on. Time we get to the fall, I can just about stand up and deadhead my roses.
That's great.
Yeah.
All these problems we're having in the heat this fall, that's going to make those big, beautiful blooms all the better. Now, Ron, I want to go back just for a second. And you said I'm going to start with liquid fertilizer.
Yeah.
Well, give a couple of tips on using liquid fertilizer successfully.
Sure. I use Easy Feed by Beatty Fertilizer, made right here in Tennessee, in Cleveland, Tennessee. And I've been using it for years. I love it. It's an organic liquid fertilizer.
I do too. I love it.
Don't smell too good, but that's a good thing. And so what I used to recommend it to people, and it's 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. You got to shake it up real good before you use it. And people I'll clarify this now when I tell them to use it. Before you apply any liquid fertilizer in the ground, not necessarily in a container, which that's all I use in my containers is liquid. And what I'll tell them to do is water the ground first around the plant, because what happened when it's dry, especially now, when it's dry, if you tuck and put mixture up a couple gallons and put it around each of your plants, it'll run away from the plant. If you water it first, it'll soak in. If you water it after, you'll dilute it.
Yeah.
So always water it first, and then come back and mix your liquid and put it in there after you water it. Then it'll soak right in and get to the roots. I always say liquid fertilizer, it's like us going and getting a shot. We go getting a shot for whatever's wrong with us or whatever, and it gets right in our system. And that's what liquid does. I love liquid fertilizer in the summertime. I love it right before a open garden. I love it right before a show. And and we got members, that's all they use. They may have 10 or 15 roses, and they just use the liquid. Now, they keep their pH right. They'll do that. But they use liquid fertilizer, and a lot of them use the Easy Feed by Beatty Fertilizer. But there's some other good ones. We have one guy, he uses Miracle Grow, and I swear he's got the prettiest roses you ever seen.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So, but if you water them first and then put your liquid around, it'll soak. In other words, it just opens up the ground for the liquid fertilizer to get to it. But if you just go out there, I've had people call me and say, well, I went out there, it run plumb off on my sidewalk or whatever.
Yeah.
I said, well, no, you need to wet that ground first and then put it around it. And but I really like liquid, and liquid is kind of the savior right now with our roses through this heat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about your favorites. What are your favorite all-time roses?
Boy, Teresa, that is tough, isn't it?
Give me about three.
What I heard somebody say one time, I read this in the American Rose Society. My favorite rose is what's blooming today.
Yep.
Yeah. I always say that, or you ought to see my garden yesterday. But anyway, when I started out growing, I remember the guy that mentored me, John Curtis, he took me and bought me 3 roses, and I never will forget this. And you probably grew all 3 of these, and I grow them today, and some of them I have 2 or 3 of. But he picked out 3 roses for me. He picked out a Mr. Lincoln, very fragrant, unbelievable red rose, Double Delight. I love the color and love the fragrance. And then he picked me out a Peace Rose. And that's the 3 I started with. That's what got me hooked. They were all 3 hybrid teas. And I guess I just jumped right in, and didn't grow shrubs a minute, nothing else. I just grew them. But I enjoyed them. I still grow them today. So I would say my favorite roses that I love in the garden that I probably recommend to a lot of people, I still love Double Delight. I just love that rose. And then I love Moonstone. Moonstone to me is just a beautiful show rose, but it's a beautiful rose to put in the vase. You give one to people, they say, man, that looks like a floral rose. And I said, well, it's just a great hybrid tea. High rated, 8.3, 8.4. And then this shrub that I can't believe since I've been in this garden, I probably turned, probably 50 people onto this rose. And every time I give it to them, You got to order it. And every time I give it to them, they'll call me back in a year and say, man, I love this rose. And that's quietness.
Yeah.
It's a shrub rose, rated high also. You can get it from Antique Rose Emporium, and they'll send it to you. Francine Tickles, I order them, and they'll come in here, and they're little old bitty things. And she said, oh, my gosh. She said, that thing ain't going to do no good until the next year. Yeah. And it looks like a hybrid tea. I mean,
it's so beautiful.
I think it's misclassified. But I've won in shows with it in the shrub division and just blow everybody else away. But I love that rose. It's a beautiful pink. It repeats bloom. It's pretty disease resistant. I don't even think I could even spray that rose. But them 3 roses, I love them 3. But there's other roses. If you said, what's your favorite climber? What's your favorite miniature? I could give you them also.
Well, let's just talk about quietness for a minute more, because I think every rose garden needs quietness. It's just like the perfect pink rose. But Roses Unlimited has a good collection of the buck roses. And so she's not really online that much for orders. She does have a website, but if you call Roses Unlimited, Pat's probably got quietness. She's actually the one who named that rose. So it's Pat Henry of Roses Unlimited. So a shout out to Pat, because that's a very special rose to her, and she usually has it in stock if anyone's trying to find it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I ordered from Antique Rose Emporium because I've used them a lot on some of my projects.
They're great.
And they always send me good, healthy plants. And I usually I'll get an extra 5 or 6 of them, give them away to new members and as a starter rose. And so I think it don't get enough credit. I just don't think it does. And
I'll tell you a story about quietness. We got new neighbors right as COVID lockdown is happening. Yeah. And our neighbors had 2 little children, 2 little girls, and 1 baby on the way.
Right.
And so you're trying to get to know people. And she had heard through the grapevine that I had a rose garden. And so she sent me a text or caught me on Facebook or something and said, my little girl, who is going to turn 4, I think, 3 or 4, wants a rose. She wants a rose bush. I'm not sure how she even knew about a rose bush, but she wanted a pink rose bush.
There you go.
So she said, can you help me? And I thought, well, quietness was the first thing that came to mind. It's almost thornless. It's just pretty pink, fragrant, all the good things you want to teach someone about a rose. So I said, let me get on this and see what I can do. And here our world is going crazy. Right. So I found the rose, and might have been, I'm not sure where I actually did find it. It might have been High Country Roses, but I found it. A little tiny rose came. So I babied it, got it as big as I could. And then when my roses bloomed, I had them come over. Everybody was very socially distanced, but I had her come over and see the rose bush in my garden, picked her roses to take. And I said, believe it or not, this little shrub's going to do this for you. And so they're constantly getting back with me, telling me, oh, we picked our last roses for the season to take to the teacher or whatever. But for some reason, this little 3-year-old girl wanted a real rose bush that had real pink roses. And so I was able to share quietness and was the perfect rose to share with her.
Absolutely. All them buck roses are unbelievable too. I don't think he ever got enough credit during his time. And, but that Carefree Beauty, we recommend that to new people, new rose growers. And, that's always in constant bloom. I don't know if you grow one.
I don't. And the pictures I see of it, I always think, why don't I have this rose? Because the pictures are just outstanding.
I have one in my garden, but we have 2 of them at the Rose Study Garden at Cheekwood. And people, and they're huge. I mean, we cut them back every year, but they just get so big, and they're in constant flower. And it's just a great buck roses. Like I said, just about every one I've ever grew, I've liked.
Mm-hmm. They're outstanding, and just such a good story.
You got to realize most people like quietness. Most people that you can't go to your local nursery and buy them.
No, I wish you could, but you can't.
I mean, if I was I'm not in the nursery business, but I tried some of our local ones. They'll call me some, and I'll recommend some roses, but they will not. See, they want to order roses that are blooming.
Yeah.
And that's what sells. And if you order quietness from Antique Rose Emporium or Roses Unlimited, they're going to come in a 2-gallon pot.
Yeah.
And they're going to be small, and people are not going to see what we know about how it's going to grow.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of roses out there that people never see, and because or never turned on to, and that's what I try to do. I try to find roses that people don't know a lot about that are great roses, and I do what you do. I said, come to my open garden, I'll show you.
Absolutely.
I have 3 quietnesses in my garden. That's how much I like them.
I used to have 7.
Wow.
Now I have 4. I've given them away to people, but I have had 7 or 8 at my top. I'm just crazy about it. It's great.
Absolutely.
It's great to plant in mass. My garden's getting too tight to plant anything in mass.
Yeah.
I just speaking of seriously, so many new roses are being released. I mean, some really good ones. So what do you think about those? What are your favorites?
We're getting a lot of our roses now for our annual rose sale that we have in the Nashville Rose Society. We're getting them from Certified. And I think you probably talked to some people at Certified through Rose Chat, hadn't you?
Yep, Francis.
Yeah. Well, great people. And I like a lot of the roses. And what I try to do every year, and I did it this year, I try to find 2 or 3 roses. And I'm lucky because a certified rep will come by we have used to be a potter, but he still comes by. He still gets some roses and pots them. And he'll come by the greenhouse, and the guy at the greenhouse, Jeff Smith at S&W Greenhouse, will call me and say, hey, he's going to be up here about 2 o'clock. And so I get to go up there and pick his brain. And I said, tell me 3 roses that I can grow this year that are new that I can recommend to people. And he said, well, I'm going to give you more than 3, but you pick out what you want. So they had one that I seen it in the catalog, and I thought, well, I couldn't tell that much about it. And so he told me more about it, but it's called Roxanne Veranda. And it's a floribunda. So they try to classify it as a shrub, but I think it's technically a floribunda. But it only grows about 2 foot tall. And it's great. He said it's great in containers. So I got 2 of them, and I planted them in the entrance into my garden. So when I had my open garden, they were blooming. And I sent you a picture of them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and they don't get no bigger, get about 2 foot. And they bloom kind of in clusters. They kind of have that old-fashioned look bloom, almost like, not like a David Austin, but similar. And so I got me 2 of them, and I'm loving it so far. I mean, he wants me to kind of give him a report on. They're not rated yet. They're brand new. And then the second one, and that's a beautiful deep red, that Roxanne Veranda. And then the second one, I don't know if you grow this. You may have been. I think you were involved with the Miracle on the Hudson at the Biltmore.
Yep.
When it was created back 2014, 15, a while. And so I love that rose. In fact, you and Chris turned me on to that rose. I bought one the first year they come out, and I have a couple of them here. One in my landscape, and it just does unbelievable.
And the blooms are like velvet. They
are. And then so he showed me, he said, we're coming out with one this year. It's a coral miracle. And I said, a coral? And he showed me the picture of it and had the catalog and all, and he put it up on his laptop. I said, man, that is beautiful. And coral color is very popular anyway. People love coral.
It is the trend for sure.
So I ended up getting 4 of them. But what I did, I had a couple people that wanted one, and he only got 10. He'll have more next year because they're new. And I sent you a picture of that. One of them was the tag, and the other one was pictured. So I love that one. Of course, that's a shrub. And last year they had the pink one. They got red, the red original Miracle on the Hudson, the pink Miracle last year, and then the coral Miracle this year. They introduced it. They'll have a lot of them next year probably. So I love that one. So he showed me this other picture of another floribunda that almost looked like it didn't look like a modern rose at all. And it's called Dancing in the Dark. It's a dark red, kind of ruffled petals, and it's a floribunda. So I have a section out here where I have nothing but, I call it my shrub garden. I have David Austin. I have, of course, the Miracle on the Hudsons, Carefree Beauty, basically that's about the kind. So I planted it out there because he said they were deciding they may even it may be classified as a shrub, but he was calling it a floribunda. So that dancing in the dark, it's a deep red, gets 3 or 4 foot tall, has a mild fragrance. One thing about the Coral Miracle, it's a double blossom type flower. It's a little bit bigger than the original red Miracle on the Hudson. So them 3 right there, I'm growing them in the ground, and I'm also growing them in pots to see how well they do. And so I look forward to giving them a rating, and we fill out our forms at the end of the year, being a consulting rosarian now. So I try every year to grow 2 or 3 roses that are new out there. But I've really, here in the last 2 or 3 years, we used to do a lot of weeks roses, but I'm getting where I really like these certified roses.
I've been doing some testing of the different roses, and I just think some of the new ones are really, really they're going to hit the mark of being what I use in my garden are mostly shrubs. I want beautiful blooms. Fragrances is, I do enjoy it, but they don't have to be fragrant, but I do want them to be as easy care as possible.
Absolutely.
So, and lots of blooms. And boy, that's what I'm seeing out of some of these new roses. And the good news is that they are available. Some of our very favorites where we're talking about, it's a little bit harder to get them because the garden centers and the big box stores are going for the new releases. And there's a lot of excitement. I mean, at our box stores, we saw some beautiful roses come through. I actually did a post about it when I first saw them come in. I went back in a couple of days to get some for myself, and they were gone. So word of mouth does work.
Yeah.
And the roses are there's some really nice ones.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of roses this year in general. After talking to the Weeks rep, and they didn't have as many. And with some strange things have happened too. I don't know if you run into this. I did. We did the National Rose Society, even through our rose sale. What happened during the pandemic, 20 and 2021, when they harvest roses out in California and southern Texas and Arizona, when they harvest the roses, they brought a lot of the staff from the office into the fields. Yeah. Now, they wasn't doing a whole lot of physical work, but they were doing the organization work. And what happened, they mislabeled a lot of the roses. Oh. So we had members say, this is not a Mr. Lincoln. This rose is yellow. And it was kind of aggravating. And it really wasn't the potter's fault because they sent him, they were tagged. Yeah. So there was a lot of that this year, but that was because of the labor. Yeah. And then they just, they were short when they harvest, they didn't have enough people. Yeah. And they didn't, and then Weeks didn't grow as many roses. They didn't harvest as many. And for years and years, we've always got them for our rose sales and stuff for the members. So, that's just the cause and effect of the virus, which is still going on in a lot of areas and everybody's business. And my construction business, we're still having a hard time getting what we need. Yeah. So, but we're not alone, and God knows what's going to happen on down the road, but we'll handle it.
We will. We definitely will. We're seeing empty shelves again in our grocery stores and that sort of thing. So, we all just have to have a spirit of grace for the people.
Absolutely.
I thought the guy from David Austin 2 years ago told it so well. I don't remember who. I think it might have been their lead guy that was on Instagram. And he did these great videos where he took you behind the scenes during that time, did a very good job. But one of the things that came out of that, and I'm not sure it was David Austin, but one of the groups said, because of social distancing, even our workers, we can't have all of our workers in the field. Yeah. So they had to erect separate, bathrooms. Only so many people could be using the different facilities. So it just takes a while to catch up. And then, we know there's been a bit of a crisis with help for people, but, all of us have been changed by this. And so, people are working hard, but it is hard to recover quickly when you have to mass produce so many things. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I got one of those mislabeled rose. It is an absolutely beautiful rose. I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out. It is a red. It's very fragrant. I thought it was going to be Tropicana. It was one of the bagged roses. And I just decided, I need Tropicana again. So, but it isn't. But I love this rose. It's in a container. All of my bagged roses got put in containers. Fragrant Cloud and a few others that I kind of had missed. I'd had many years ago, and I've kind of missed them. But boy, I'd love to know what this is. I'm going to have to do some investigating to see if it's Mr. Lincoln.
Take some pictures of the plant and the flower, and the leaf, and I guarantee you, in the rose world, as you well know, there's somebody out there can identify that.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'm on it. But it's a great rose. It's great in the container. So, it was a happy mishap.
Yeah, sometimes it's good enough to know their name.
Well, Ron, I'm going to ask you one more thing. You're one of the busiest guys I know. Any new projects coming up? You've had some pretty big projects the last few years.
When I last talked to you, the Tennessee Titans was going to do one, and we got right down to doing it, and they decided not to. I said, he said, we may do it later. And I said, I've got all the work done on it. You guys get ready for it. We'll put it into action. But this spring, I went up in Kentucky, up in Owensboro, which is about 70-something miles from here. And I was asked to come up to speak to the master gardeners and 2 other garden groups. And so I went up, and the lady said, if you don't mind, after you speak and do your presentation, I want you to come over here and look at at the Western Kentucky Botanical Garden rose garden. I said, we're having some problems. I said, I'll be glad to. And she said, we're going to feed you. Don't worry about that. And you know how gardeners are about food. And then I said, cool. And so I'm up here. I might as well go over there. So I got through I spoke about 10 o'clock, and we were through about 12:30. And so we ate lunch, and we all, about 10 of them, drove over there to the site. The site was a historic site. I didn't realize it was called the Weberberry home. It had changed hands 2 or 3 times, but the house was built in 1840. And they had turned it into a botanical garden. It was kind of a Greek revival style house. And it was, the house itself had been several people lived there. At one time, the Weather Bureau had a weather station there, believe it or not. So it had a lot of history behind it. And so they had just redid this original rose garden that was there back in the 1800s. And so they took me over there, and the hardscape was unbelievable. I mean, what they done, they had to spend a ton of money. And then it had a huge fountain in the middle, and it was a circular garden in 4 quarters. And it was just, I mean, if you're going to build one public garden, this is it.
Ooh.
Well, they were so upset. They said, we planted 200 something roses here, and half of them are dead. I said, you got to be kidding. And so they had a list of the roses they planted. And I'm thinking, most of these, some of them old garden roses, I said, they just don't die. I mean, they're tougher than nails. They had a water system. I mean, they were, and come to find out, I told them, I said, y'all got a shovel? And they said, yeah, we'll find you a shovel. So they found me a shovel, and I went out there and dug. And Teresa, they spent all this money on this hardscape and redoing this garden, and spent nothing on improving the soil.
Oh, dear.
And the soil, we tested it, and it was terrible. I mean, you couldn't grow weeds in it. I mean, it was awful. And I dug up a plant, and they just could not believe it. And a lot of these people that were with me didn't have much input into it. They just took it over as a master gardener project.
Yeah.
And so I said, guys, you got a beautiful hardscape here. Half these roses are dead. They didn't think they was dead till I showed them. And I said, I'm telling you right now, I said, I'm not the architect here. I'm not the person that designed this. And I don't know any of the background, but let me tell you something. They missed the best part, the most important part, the soil. And so I said, send me a schematic of it. I'll figure how much soil you need to improve what you've got. So I helped them through it, and they went in there, I think in April, and took out the old Kentucky clay and they made a little bit of a raised bed, and they had to replant. So I turned them on to Antique Rose Emporium because they wanted a lot of the old garden of the era, and I gave them a list of what they would have been growing back in them days, and at antebellum homes and stuff. And so they got it back going in the right direction. But it was one of the things I talked about earlier about my garden. One of my, other than location, it was important that I had the right soil out here. Mm-hmm. And that's, can you imagine? It is no telling how many thousands of dollars they spent and did not spend anything on the soil.
Just didn't have Ron to tell them about that good soil.
And I mean, to me, I couldn't believe it. And they was telling me how many thousands of dollars. If you've seen this, I've seen some pictures of, you'll say, man, this, what a sight. I mean, unbelievable. But they got it going. I corresponded with them, and I gave them a game plan. And I hadn't been back up there because they took pictures of what they done and emailed them to me. But I gave them a game plan, and I'll be darned if they didn't follow it to a T. They raised the money. They ended up raising $40,000, $50,000. Some donor gave them money to replace the soil, and because it's going to be a lot of work. Yeah. I mean, they had to go back in there and protect what already been done, the hardscape and all. And so, but anyway, you think people would think about that first when you grow something, but they could have not even had none of that hardscape and put good soil, and then had a nice rose garden.
There you go. But, yep. It does always gets back to the dirt. I'm a big believer in dirt. I love dirt. I love the soil. It's hard for me to wear gloves. I know that I should, but just something about the soil. There's just magic in it when you get it right.
Right. So they got it going in the right direction. So that's been my project this year. It's been real rewarding because it's real. When you give somebody a plan and they follow it, mm-hmm. It's kind of rewarding because, I told him, I said, y'all can get some more input. I mean, on this, he said, Mr. Daniels said, nobody's told us to do this. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I'm telling you right now, you'll see a big difference, and especially when you get on into the summer and next spring. So I gave him a maintenance plan. I gave him a fertilization plan, and it's about 15 master gardeners that take care of it. And that's their project. That's how they get their hours yearly. Mm-hmm. And a couple of them are turning into pretty good rosarians.
That's great. See, you have such good news. Yeah. They're always inspiring.
That's exciting when, because I've done several of these. So they asked me, have you ever done one of these? I said, yeah, I've done around Middle Tennessee. Belmont College. A couple of antebellum homes around. I've helped them restore the gardens. I said, I love doing it. And I said, you guys are going to, and they couldn't believe the results. Of course, they got new plants, mm-hmm. But they said we had a hard time digging up them old ones because, they were good. They seen the names of them. They were great roses me and you grow.
Yeah.
And so that's been my project so far this year. And I've enjoyed doing that up there. And I never would dream I'd go up to Owensboro, Kentucky and do this. But they asked me, one of them come down to my open garden. He said, will you come up and speak to us? He said, we'll pay all your expenses. And that's an issue right now. I spoke yesterday, and they wouldn't let me leave there unless they gave me gas money.
Oh, see, It's a good world. The rose world's a good world.
Absolutely.
It's a good world. Well, Ron, we've run out of time. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I know. It goes by fast.
It goes by fast. Thank you for all the tips. Thank you for all the inspiration. Thank you for all the great work. And we can't wait for the PBS special. Well, friends, I hope you found some garden inspiration today. I sure did. And until next time, happy gardening.
You've been listening to the Rose Chat podcast with Chris Van Cleve and Teresa Byington, expert rose gardeners who want to help you achieve the rose garden of your dreams. Don't miss an episode. Listen anytime on our website at rosechatpodcast.com or listen on the go via the Rose Chat app on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Share this podcast with your social networks and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by using the hashtag RoseChat. Join us next time for another edition of the Rose Chat Podcast. The Rose Chat Podcast is a production of the Rose Chat Media Group, Birmingham, Alabama.